This deep DISCOG dive was chosen by my Patreon community, thanks to all the members who voted to see this artist covered.
Welcome back to the deep DISCOG dive. I installed a talkbox in my throat for this one. I am in so much pain.
Today, we're talking about Stevie Wonder. Let's dive in.
You can't read Braille.
Saginaw, Michigan, in May 1950, Stevland... That's his name? Stevland Hardaway Judkins was born. The biggest surprise of his birth was not his first name, though. He was born 6 weeks premature and placed in an incubator. The excess oxygen led to retinopathy of prematurity. It's an eye disease that can cause, at worst, retinal detachment, meaning right after he was born, Stevland was blind. Following a divorce, Stevland's mother took him and his siblings to Detroit. It was there where Stevland first started playing music, and he took to it like a moth to a Hohner Marine band. By 7, he knew the harmonica and drums. By 9, he knew the piano. Plus, he would often sing in the Whitestone Baptist Church choir. Stevland was a musical prodigy before he hit double digits. But what's a musical prodigy if they don't have a record deal? I know this riddle. A decorated ostrich riding a Segway. At the age of 11, Stevland sang an original tune for Ronnie White from The Miracles. Ronnie was so impressed that he brought Stevland and his mom to the label where he was signed, Motown. The label's head honcho, Berry Gordy, liked what he heard, and he signed young Stevland to a record deal under Tamla, one of Motown's subsidiaries. Because of his age, Stevland and his mom were paid a stipend, he was given a tutor, and his royalties would be held in trust until he turned 21. He would also be able to void the contract once he reached that age. From then on, it was time for this artist to get developed. Stevland was assigned to one of Motown's songwriters and producers, Clarence Paul, and it was Clarence who assigned Stevland a new name. From then on, he would be known as Little Stevie Wonder. Work kicked off immediately on some music from the artist formerly known as Stevland. Within a year, Stevie and Clarence finished 2 albums. One was a collection of Ray Charles covers, and the other was full of originals by Clarence and another Motown producer, Henry Cosby. In September 1962, we got the jazz soul of Little Stevie. By the way, that name is going to stick for a little bit. It's indicative of where Stevie was starting his journey. Hey, I could technically not cover the albums by Little Stevie Wonder because they're not attributed to Stevie Wonder. Everyone would love that. I hope you're ready to hear Little Stevie's angelic voice because you won't hear it on this album. This is a fully instrumental record. What's more, there are no original songs by Stevie. They all come courtesy of Clarence and Henry. At this point, Motown singers were basically told what to sing and when. The producers and the arrangers had the actual say over what the song would be. The album is less cohesive collection of songs meant to be enjoyed as a whole, and more, look at this young kid and all the crazy stuff he can do. And that works. Don't forget, Stevie was a prodigy. One song he's on bongos, next song he's on harmonica, song after that he's on keys. Plus, this album is as much a showcase for the bandmates who would play with Stevie for the next decade or so. The Funk Brothers, Motown's in-house session musicians. James Jamerson on bass, Benny Benjamin on rhythm section, Earl Van Dyke on organ, another new addition to Motown, Marvin Gaye on drums and piano. And of course, there was Clarence Paul and Henry Cosby as songwriters and producers. Most of these folks would work with Stevie for pretty much the next decade. Jazz Soul of Little Stevie is a novelty, but it's a fun novelty. It's like Michael Jackson's first album. You can't criticize a child's album. Are you a f***ing ass? Jazz Soul of Little Stevie made no impact at all, did not chart anywhere. That might surprise you considering Stevie was backed by Motown, but remember the time they were in. Motown was 3 years old and had only scored a few hits at this point. They were coming into their own just as Stevie was. But hey, what do you do when your first child is a flop? Put out another one a month later. Just a month after Stevie's debut, we got the other album Stevie had recorded, Tribute to Uncle Ray. Like I said before, this is Stevie doing mostly Ray Charles covers for a whole album, along with a few songs by Clarence and Henry. Motown was trying to position Stevie next to another blind African-American piano-playing musician. At this time, Ray Charles was freaking huge, not only as a jazz musician, but as someone who easily crossed over into pop and even country. Beyond the surface similarities, it made sense that Motown would want people to see Stevie in the same way. Also, to be clear, Stevie loved Ray. This was not some kind of manufactured thing by Motown. Plus, beyond all the instruments he plays, we do get to hear little Stevie's voice for the first time. And it's a nice voice, light, flexible, with just a hint of adolescent rasp. However, just like before, this album is a fun novelty. More focused than before given its narrow concept, but nothing incredible. In fact, I feel a little odd to be covering these early albums as albums, because they might be albums in theory, but they're not in purpose. And that's not to shade any of these albums, it's just simply how Motown and Berry Gordy viewed albums in the 1960s. It's how most labels viewed albums before they became this prestigious thing. You would get a hit song, surround it with a bunch of filler, and then push it to market while the song was still hot. Tribute to Uncle Ray also made no impact at all, which wasn't a huge deal for Motown at this point. They soon scored their first #1 hit with Please Mr. Postman, and they had other acts who would soon see major success. Stevie was clearly just getting warmed up with the albums, and his big break would actually come from an unexpected place. You see, Motown used to do these traveling concert tours where they'd put together a whole lot of their artists. The Motortown Review, it was called. Stevie would of course go out on the road for these. Back in June 1962, he played at the Regal Theater in Chicago. And from that set, we got his first live album, recorded live, The 12-Year-Old Genius, though it wasn't released until May 1963. The whole album is a good time, but from this album, we were bequeathed his first hit single, Fingertips Part 2. The past two albums had already shown that Stevie was very good at music, but what makes Fingertips Part 2 stand out is how good Stevie was at working a crowd, feeding off their energy. It's the intangible feeling that comes from live performance that he was already capturing at a young age. And I think that's a big reason Fingertips Part 2 went on to be Stevie's first #1 hit. Stevie became the youngest solo artist to top the Hot 100, a title he still holds to this day. Stevie and Motown went to work quickly on an album meant to capitalize on Fingertips. That album was Work Out, Stevie, Work Out, but for some reason it got shelved. It wouldn't be publicly available until it was on a compilation in 2005. At least the title track was a hit on its own. So if it wasn't Work Out, Stevie, Work Out, how would Motown capitalize on Stevie's first big hit? That was really gross. I'm sorry you had to see that. In December 1963, Stevie Wonder released With a Song in My Heart. Look at that, no more little in his name. Stevie ain't little anymore. He was a grown-up, and like a lot of grown-ups, he's boring now. Okay, sorry, that's a little rude, but hear me out. For the next couple of albums, we would see Motown try to figure out what Stevie was. This time, Stevie is smooth jazz and adult contemporary. Not a bad idea necessarily. Motown wanted to position Stevie apart from his child prodigy days. He was not a mere novelty act, but a genuine star. They even got Ernie Wilkins to help lather on the big band orchestration. He had worked with Sarah Vaughan and Count Basie. Scary. But even with all that put into it, God, this does not work for me. The band sounds good, but the arrangements they're given are not unique in any way. And while Stevie sounds nice and plays well, I don't buy it when he, at this age, is singing about this stuff. It's the Taylor Swift 15 problem. Songs about mature relationships and love do not work for me coming out of a child's mouth. I didn't care for this one. Sorry. With a Song in My Heart arrived with no hits in its track list. Another swing and miss for Stevie and Motown. It was just really bad execution. It didn't excite the existing teenage fans. Adults didn't bite at a still young guy singing like this. Plus, the culture just wasn't right for it. JFK had been assassinated a few weeks before the album came out, and a few weeks after it, 4 British blokes would land in America and kickstart a whole new phase of pop culture. So the role of smooth crooner didn't fit Stevie. What else could Motown try? I know, radical surfer bro. In early 1964, surf music was ruling the airwaves. Bands like the Beach Boys were all the rage. why couldn't Stevie get in on that action?
I could fill the rest of this video with reasons.
The first step towards getting Stevie in on this scene was in March 1964. He had a role in Muscle Beach Party as himself. The next step was a full-on surf album, Stevie at the Beach, Doot 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 Doo, in June 1964. The concept of Stevie Wonder surf album is comical to me in the same way that David Bowie reggae album or Pink Pantherist opera album is comical. Like, the idea of it in retrospect is wild. So I'm personally disappointed to say the actual album is not as comical. The production is still in line with the Motown sound beyond some like wave sound effects and jangly electric guitars. And the core things Stevie sings about are the same, except with some mentions of the ocean and something called the beach stomp. Stevie at the Beach may aim to catch a gnarly wave, but it only ends up treading water. Hang 10.
Hey guys, life's a beach.
Stevie at the Beach landed with a thud. The only thing keeping it from total flop status was a mild hit with Hey Harmonica Man. Even a second surf movie appearance in July 1964 couldn't make Stevie the king of the beach.
Stevie was feeling more pressure from above to get hits on the charts, to carve out a place for himself, especially since Motown was starting to rack up hits from the Supremes, the Miracles, the Temptations, which has got to be a rough spot to be in, not just as an artist, but as a kid. Stevie was about to be 16 at this point, which reminds me, what also didn't help was the raging demon known as puberty coming for Stevie's voice.
Stevie might have gotten the boot around this time had it not been for Sylvia Moy, Motown's first in-house female songwriter. She convinced Barry to give Stevie one more shot, and together, Stevie and Sylvia wrote like their lives depended on it. Because, at least for Stevie, it kinda did. The fruit of their labor was Uptight, released in May 1966.
Now, I'll warn you up front, based on that preamble I just gave, you might think that this was gonna be a legendary album for Stevie. It was not.
It was a success where it mattered, getting Stevie back on the charts, but the album is just solid overall. Though we gotta put some respect on this title track. It's probably the best song of Stevie's up to this point. He sings about how everything is great because of the love in his life, and God, you can feel it in his voice and in the band. In fact, the song took heavy inspiration from the Rolling Stones, specifically I Can't Get No Satisfaction. Ooh, a sign that Stevie was looking to other genres for inspiration? Stevie was also starting to get into the songwriting game. Uptight and 4 other songs were co-written by Stevie. This is where you can hear Stevie's songwriting voice start to take shape. I should also note the cover of Bob Dylan's Blowin' in the Wind, not just because it's a signal of what kind of artist Stevie was aspiring to be, but also because it showed Stevie stepping ever so gingerly towards referencing politics in his music. Beyond that, the rest of the album is fine, but it was enough to show Stevie had the juice to stay at Motown. Or at least to not do another surfer album. Uptight the song became a top 5 hit in the US and Stevie's first Grammy-nominated song. 2 other songs off the album became hits as well. This was definitely the win Stevie needed. Not everyone loved where Stevie was taking his sound, though. After performing on a variety show, Stevie got a call from Smokey Robinson, who had some choice words for him. This was, according to Stevie, his growing up moment at Motown. But y'all know the game at this point. When Motown had success, they rushed to capitalize.
Stevie had his groove back, but if Uptight was any indication, he had the potential to do more, to combine his talent for writing hit songs with his, for lack of a better word, vision.
He had it in him to make a genuine masterpiece of an album. And if the follow-up, November 1966's Down to Earth, was any indication, he didn't really do it.
Yeah, it's gonna be a little bit before we see another major shift in Stevie's artistic direction. But don't worry, in the meantime, we will get to hear some classic songs.
Motown knew they had something with Stevie when he was doing songs like Uptight. And with Down to Earth, we get a blend of Uptight and With a Song in My Heart.
Yeah.
But no need to fret. Guitar, because this album is solid. A Place in the Sun opens the album on a lovely note, something a bit more mature for Stevie, weaving in some general social commentary. Stevie really goes to some interesting places on here. We've got another Bob Dylan cover with Mr. Tambourine Man, a coal miner song from 1946, and some songs take on a darker tone, like a cover of Cher's Bang Bang. It's definitely darker than Caroline Polachek's cover for Minions: The Rise of Gru. Sorry, I blacked out there. Did I just say words? Also, listen to this bit on The Lonesome Road. The way he distorts the mic with his yelling, I love that bit. Isn't this great? I have actual songs to shout out now. It's a nice change from earlier when I was like,
So these albums have music.
while it's not a classic album, Down to Earth has some very good songs and is a teeny step forward for our boy Stevie. A Place in the Sun was Stevie's third top 10 hit, and the rest of the album successfully prevented the heat death of the universe. Don't look at me like that, you can't prove it didn't.
Don't think Stevie was untouchable just yet, though. The pressure was still on him to keep up the hot streak of singles from the past few records.
Stevie, Henry Cosby, and Sylvia Moy whipped up 2 songs that could be his next big hit. One was inspired by the Beatles' Michelle, and the other was a standard that many other Motown artists were covering around this time. Berry Gordy shelved both, but don't worry, you'll get to hear them soon enough. The song that ended up being Stevie's next single was May 1967's I Was Made to Love Her. There are so many fun details about this one. For one, it's probably Stevie's most autobiographical song yet, as it was written about the first girl he ever loved. Stevie's mother has a co-writing credit on it. There's a spooky mystery about who played bass on it, either James Jamerson or Carol Kay. The harmonica is back for what feels like the first time in a long while. Electric sitar. The singing on it is damn good too. Henry Cosby took Stevie to a Baptist church to hear how a preacher speaks, then had Stevie sing like that preacher. I Was Made to Love Her was also an excellent opener for the album of the same name, released in August 1967. The rest of the album is, say it with me now, fine. More fine originals, more fine covers. If you've been begging to hear what Stevie Wonder's singing Respect would sound like, it's been around for nearly 60 years. I wish someone had told you sooner. There's also a cover of My Girl, which belongs in the top 5 songs of all time. Let me also say, Stevie's starting to nail his singing voice at this point. Some folks have said the turning point for his voice was on one of the past 2 albums, but for me, this was where he started to sound like the star he would become. I Was Made to Love Her was another top 10 hit for Stevie, and it would go on to be covered by several other artists in the years to come. Stevie was really proving himself as a crucial and necessary writer for Motown, but at this point, he was missing something in his repertoire. Some holiday cheer. Back in November 1966, Stevie had released a Christmas song, Someday at Christmas. The song saw modest chart success, but it was enough for Stevie and the Funk Brothers to record a Christmas album in the same summer that I Was Made to Love Her was popular. That album, also called Someday at Christmas, came out in November 1967. Now that's a nice cover. Colorful, immediately understood as a Christmas album, just great. Charlene, pull up the alternate cover. Perfect, even better, no notes, graphic design is my passion. Like past albums, we've got a mix of originals and covers, but this time with a sprinkle of Xmas Xnergy. The newest element for this particular album is the heavy presence of Motown writer Ron Miller. Ron had already been working with Stevie on the past 2 albums, but on this album, he has a hand on every original. Another interesting non-Xmas note about this album, it was the first to not have Clarence Paul as producer, largely because Clarence just wasn't getting hits with Stevie like he used to. Beyond that, yeah, this sure is a Stevie Wonder Christmas album. The title track is a lovely call for peace. What Christmas means to me adds a bit of personal flair, which I always like in my Kris Kringle eras. If the concept of a Stevie Wonder Christmas album gets you like, check this out. Otherwise, Someday at Christmas did not chart on any US album charts, but the single did reasonably well. Its profile really grew when a family band covered it a few years later. The Jackson 5, they were called. And since then, it's become the most covered Motown Christmas song. This holiday cheer did not extend far into 1968, however. In April 1968, Stevie went to MLK Jr.'s funeral. This continued to fuel his political drive and laid the seed for one of his biggest contributions to American society. Meanwhile, Motown kept pushing Stevie away from boy star and towards man star. They wanted to diversify his audience. He had the teeny boppers locked down, but what about a more adult crowd? They decided some adult contemporary was in order. This plan kicked off with the modestly successful single, Alfie, Stevie's cover of the Burt Bacharach tune.
But Motown didn't want to lump this next album in with what Stevie had been doing. In order to avoid confusing his audience, they released it under a new label and a new name.
In November 1968, we got Eivets Rednow. This was released on Gordy Records, making this the only Stevie album not released by either Tamla or Motown. Granted, Gordy Records was owned by Motown, so we're splitting the hairs of hairs here. And the album name is Stevie Wonder backwards. Or technically it's Wonder Stevie backwards. His actual name backwards would be Eivets, but then we're splitting third generation hairs. We've got ourselves a fully instrumental album. The cover of Alfie I mentioned earlier is quite nice. It's also nice to hear the harmonica get a bigger role on a Stevie album, or excuse me, a Stevie adjacent album. Hearing it on Alfie and Never My Love Ask the Lonely always puts a grin on my chin and a smile on my tile. How Can You Believe is nice on its own, but it's especially worthy of note because it was later sampled on Madvillain's Great Day. Ooh, what's that I see? 3 songs written solely by Stevie? Be Still My Beating Parathyroid Glands. And the album closes with a cover of Hugh Masekela's Grazing in the Grass, which was a big hit earlier in 1968. If nothing else, this is a nice compliment to the instrumental album that started Stevie's career. Even if Eivets Rednow is not a classic album, it's a sign of how far Stevie had come. Eivets Rednow made no impact on the charts beyond Alfie, but in fairness, Motown knew what to expect when they put this out under a new name and with no aggressive promotion. Stevie was back to releasing music under his own name in March 1968 with his first Greatest Hits album. Isn't that wild? We haven't even gotten to the real big tunes, and Stevie already had a Greatest Hits compilation.
Just to give you context for how little time we've covered, at this point, Stevie was a few months shy of 18.
But what was Stevie's next hit for Motown? All right, I'm gonna put up a warning. You need to stop watching this video right now if you know what's good for you. I am not responsible for anything that happens to you in the next minute. Please turn the video off now.
For once in my life,
I adore For Once in My Life. Now what's f***ed up about this song being so good is that it's a cover of a much slower song, a song that had already been done by the Four Tops and the Temptations. Listening to this slower version feels like sacrilege to me. It's like finding out the Bible was originally one of those AI-generated fruit romance videos. What's also f***ed up is that Berry Gordy hated this version. Remember how Berry Gordy shelved 2 songs from Stevie, and one was a song other Motown folks had been covering? Stevie's version of this was shelved for about a year until Billie Jean Brown, the head of the Motown Quality Control Department, said to Berry,
Honey, don't be f***ing dumb.
but by putting some pep in its step, Stevie made one of the greatest love songs of all time. I love Stevie's singing, I love the bass line, I love the choir that leads into the key change, I love the harmonica solo. The whole song is pitch perfect. The song was a smash hit when it released in October 1968, and 2 months later, we got the album of the same name. I only have 2 other songs to shout out, Shooby Dooby Doo Da Day for how good Stevie sounds on it, and Do I Love Her for Stevie's falsetto, and for being written from his perspective to the mother of the girl he loves. But who needs love when you have musical equipment? At least that's what my Sweetwater rep tells me. The most important part of this album, aside from its songs, is this, the Hohner clavinet. This was the first Stevie Wonder album to feature it, and we will see it many more times in the albums to come. For Once in My Life was a massive hit single, and the album did fine.
Still, it's not like Stevie was fully content with his stature at Motown. Having to fight Berry Gordy to get a gold-plated record out wasn't fun. This was one of many signs that Stevie was starting to outgrow the traditional Motown model. And that model was indeed traditional. While Motown was a well-oiled machine with dozens of hits under their belt at this point,
Pop culture was starting to move in different directions. Rock bands and funk artists were exciting people in a way that Motown's well-made yet predictable hits weren't. To help boost the album's sales, Motown released I Don't Know Why as a single in January 1969. But as it got pushed to the radio stations, Motown noticed something odd. The stations were not playing I Don't Know Why. Instead, they preferred to play its B-side, a song called My Cherie Amour. Motown decided to re-release this song as a proper single in the summer of 1969, at which point it became yet another hit for Stevie. And you know what that means. Get back into the Hitsville mines, Stevland. In August 1969, Stevie released the album My Cherie Amour. All right, so the title track.
Yeah. In about 10 seconds, you're going to want to punch me in the face. Yeah. Hey, don't worry about it, but in about 5 seconds, you're going to want to slap me upside the head like a pancake with malaria. All right, I guess here it comes. I've never loved this song.
I mean, it's good. I do get the My Cherie Amour stuck in my head occasionally, but it doesn't do it for me like Stevie's other love songs. Honestly, it kind of feels like a regression for Stevie, and that might be because it kind of is. My Cherie Amour had been sitting in the Motown vault for about 2 years. This is the song I mentioned earlier that was inspired by the Beatles' Michelle. What about the rest of the album? I got my driver's license last week. It's like stuffed with covers for some reason. Another Stevie album with 1 or 2 big hits, fleshed out with a whole bunch of covers. Hearing Stevie do At Last or Hello Young Lovers or even Light My Fire is cool, but I do not see myself coming back to them all that often. At least there's also the lovely original Yester Me, Yester You, Yesterday. Look out for its sequel, Yester We, Yester Them, Yesterday the Movie. My Cherie Amour was a hit song, along with Yester Me, Yester You, Yesterday, but the album was considered fine. It wasn't a major step forward for Stevie. And he knew that. He was growing more and more unhappy with the limitations placed on him at Motown. He wanted more. But the business wasn't slowing down, especially when Stevie was cranking out hits. Stevie released his second live album in March 1970, Stevie Wonder Live. It's what you would expect from an album with those 3 words in the title, and there's a nice bit where he sings Bobby Darin's Once in a Lifetime. There was also a third live album released later in 1970, but it's basically the same thing. His next big single came out in the summer. It was inspired by the sound of Stax Records out in Memphis, something with a bit more grit and dirt and moxie. Signed, sealed, delivered, I'm Yours. Possibly the most famous downward-moving sequence of 7 notes in popular music history. This song was a crucial first in a lot of ways. For one, Stevie produced it all by himself. Also, this was the first Stevie song to be co-written by Sarita Wright. Sarita joined Motown as a secretary, then a background vocalist, and then, based on Stevie's advice, a songwriter. Signed, Sealed, Delivered, I'm Yours peaked at number 3 on the Hot 100. But in a stunning reversal, Motown decided to not follow it up with an album, choosing instead to let Stevie take time.
Nah, I'm kidding. They got an album out in 2 months.
Signed, Sealed, and Delivered in August 1970. Please don't make me say it again. You're gonna make me say it again, aren't you? Okay, fine. This Stevie album had 1 big hit and a whole bunch of covers. But at least among the covers this time is the Beatles' We Can Work It Out, which is really damn good. Can't Judge a Book by Its Cover, Anything You Want Me to Do, I Can't Let My Heaven Walk Away. They're all fine. It's another fine album. Fine.
This is getting repetitive. It's the same core story every time. Stevie writes a hit, a new album comes out a few months later, rinse and repeat. And I apologize for that as much as I can apologize for another man's life, but I appreciate you sticking around because things are about to start changing.
Because believe me, Stevie wanted things to change. He was fed up with the rigidity of Motown. He wanted to touch on the real-world forces that were impacting people. The Vietnam War raging on, continued systemic racism following the passage of the Civil Rights Act. The fact that he was just sitting there making the same, albeit good, kind of song did not sit well with him. But here is where things change.
All my believers in the linear progression of time might be realizing that Stevie was 20 years old when SS&D came out. meaning in May 1971, he would be 21, meaning he could void his contract with Motown. Stevie knew the power he held in this Motown hoedown. In other words, the label would have to accept whatever he gave them.
For this next album, Stevie enlisted Syreeta Wright, who was not only a trusted songwriting partner, but as of September 1970, his wife. They got married. The album they would make together saw them as the sole songwriters and Stevie as the sole producer. In April 1971, Stevie Wonder released Where I'm Coming From. Everything had been leading to this album, Stevie's big creative breakthrough. He would finally prove that he was more than just another Motown hitmaker. And he didn't really do it. Look up transitional album in the dictionary, and it probably won't be there because it's a phrase. Where I'm Coming From is like if Stevie and Syreeta took all the creative ideas they've had for the past few years and just threw them at a wall. It's colorful, it gets your attention, but boy is it a mess. This is Stevie's most overtly political album yet. Opener Look Around has Stevie urging the people to view all over and see the injustice around them. I Want to Talk to You is framed like a conversation between a young black man and an old southern white man. It's like Joyner Lucas's I'm Not Racist, and someone somewhere definitely wants to kill me for that comparison. It's also Stevie's most sonically experimental album. Do Yourself a Favor pays homage to Sly and the Family Stone. Sunshine in Their Eyes spends 7 minutes bouncing between a child's innocent worldview and an adult's depressed reality. Take Up a Course in Happiness is surreal-ass vaudeville. It might be Stevie's worst song yet, though it does serve as a precursor to a favorite song of mine. The song structures are looser, the instrumentation is more varied, like when Stevie busts out the Moog synthesizer, and when Stevie nails it like on If You Really Love Me and Never Dreamed You'd Leave in Summer, by God does he nail it. The bones of what a Stevie Wonder album could be are here, even when the muscles and the skin aren't. With all that said though, I'm glad this exists. I'm very partial to transitional art that is clearly setting up something greater. Sometimes you gotta make The Royal Scam before you can make Asia. Sometimes you gotta make Piano 3 before you can make Vanquish. So let's see what Stevie was gonna do next. If nothing else, Where I'm Coming From met the cultural moment more than any other Stevie Wonder release yet. But it's odd. If You Really Love Me was a top 10 hit, but Wicf did not sell well at all. What's going on? Oh, that's what's going on.
Yeah, so a month after Where I'm Coming From, another Motown artist released his own politically charged album. It went on to be one of the most acclaimed albums of all time and pretty much stole Stevie's thunder.
Plus, Wicf just wasn't on the same level as Wgo. Critics called it self-indulgent and scatterbrained. What's a Stevie to do now? Well, what if I told you there was an album?
No fucking way.
In spring 1971, Stevie's touring bassist, Ronnie Blanco, showed him an album called Zero Time. It was by Tonto's Expanding Headband. And this shit blew Stevie's mind. Within a few weeks, Stevie met the two dudes behind the album, Malcolm Cecil and Robert Margouleff, as well as their invention, an analog synthesizer, the original new timbral orchestra, or Tonto. You ever hike up a big mountain only to be met with a gorgeous view? You ever meet the person you know you're gonna spend the rest of your life with? You ever successfully pull off an air slash with the longsword in Monster Hunter? That feeling is what Stevie felt when he got behind the Tonto. A whole new world of sonic possibilities opened up to him. Good timing too, because his label possibilities were also wide open. His contract with Motown had lapsed by this point, and he was getting offers from Atlantic and CBS. But eventually, Stevie decided to sign a new deal with Motown, one that would give him full artistic control over his records, a 14% royalty rate in an industry where 5% was high, and his own publishing company. And in March 1972, Stevie Wonder gave us Music of My Mind.
Now, frankly, we've been talking about Stevie Wonder for God knows how many minutes at this point, and so far his story has been small, incremental steps, which makes you Stevie wonder, what would be the turning point? What would be the event that truly launched us into the next era of Stevie? My friends, let me introduce you to Superwoman, Where Were You When I Needed You?
Someone in my Patreon said that this was his Pink Floyd Echoes moment, like the song where Stevie stopped being one artist and became another. God, that's good. The first half, Superwoman, is this chill bossa nova number about a woman who wants to leave a relationship to become a star. On its own, this is a great track. But then, halfway through, Stevlin starts doing some shit. The Tonto synth helps transition us to the second half, Where Were You When I Needed You? This is a reworking of one of the songs from Wicf, Never Dreamed You'd Leave in Summer. And that was a good song. But what Stevie does here is such a big step above. Stevie sings about the girl who went on to get big, passionately begging for her to come back. The band around him quietly escalates until you suddenly realize, oh, we've changed keys. Oh, the band is a lot more fleshed out. Oh, Stevie is doing some of the greatest riffing to ever grace a recording. To hear the second half of this song is to witness the realization of someone's true potential. It's the ending drum solo from Whiplash, except there are no bad connotations. It's just pure musical excellence. But what about the rest of the album? The most important word in that album title is my. As opposed to past albums that had the Funk Brothers backing them up, Mom has Stevie on nearly every single instrument, including the Tonto synth. That Tonto album I mentioned before was certainly cool, but it was also those guys faffing about. Stevie Wonder had goals with the Tonto synth. He had it on a 5-year plan. He's able to extract so much emotion out of it. It was almost a totally different instrument when he used it. You want to talk highlights? Easy. Love Having You Around. Opens the album with some of the grittiest funk Stevie's committed to tape yet. Happier Than the Morning Sun. The Rolling Stones influence is strong yet again. Some calming psychedelia with the clavinet getting to shine. Sweet Little Girl has Stevie as suave seducer, switching between a swing beat and a straight beat. Also, in the fade out, he says the N-word.
Which, I mean, he can do it. It's just kind of surprising to hear it from him.
Keep on running? Here's a test. Put this song on and try to solve the biggest problem in your life. You will solve it within the first minute and also world hunger. This is an absolute unstoppable groove machine. And the closer, Evil, simply stellar. A major change of pace from past album closers with how downtrodden and melancholic it is about evil at large. It really makes you feel like Darius from Atlanta leaving Teddy Perkins' house. On one hand, having all the previous Stevie albums under my ear-shaped belt makes me appreciate Music of My Mind a lot more. But on the other hand, God, I'm so glad we're here now. Music of My Mind is the first certified classic album from Stevie Wonder. My good friends, we are now entering Stevie Wonder's classic period, the Fuckler mode phase, if you will.
The albums Stevie would release over these next few years are nothing short of legendary.
By this point, other artists had established that the album has artistic merit, so it brings me great joy to see Stevie slide in with his own achievement. What's messed up, though, is how people at the time didn't see it. Sales and reviews for Mom were good, but not on the level you'd expect from the album that has Where Were You When I Needed You. Well, it's a good thing Stevie and the Tonto Boys had recorded enough material for an immediate follow-up. Stevie actually had trouble deciding on the track list for it, and Malcolm had to remind him this was an album, not a talking book.
Say that again?
Speaking of Malcolm, he happened to be buddies with Mick Jagger, and in June and July 1972, Stevie Wonder toured with the Rolling Stones as their opener. This was a good chance for Stevie to test out some of his new material, like a song about ghosts or something. I don't know, I've never heard music. Around that same time, Stevie produced Sarita Wright's first album, and he sang on the excellent To Know You Is To Love You. This also kicks off a trend for Stevie, collabs. Mentioning all the collabs that Stevie would go on to do would bloat this video by a lot, so I appreciate your understanding in advance when I don't talk about all of them, but I will mention the ones that I like. In October 1972, Stevie Wonder released his talking book. In many ways, this is Music of My Mind 2. More Stevie performing virtually the whole album, more Tonto synth, more clav, but the album's biggest differentiator is how chill it is. If Love Having You Around kicked the door down with arms wide open, You Are the Sunshine of My Life quietly opens it with a bouquet of flowers. It's like the morning sun shining through the window, illuminating the person you love. Big Brother is the most political song on the album, but the way it bounces with this clav that sounds like acoustic guitar, it comes off like a jaunty road trip song. Even a song like Maybe Your Baby with a fuzzy moog and electric guitar solo moves like it's walking through molasses, but like really cool molasses. However, the slower pace means that smaller moments get to shine in a way that they might not have been able to before. I think of You Got It Bad Girl and the delectable syncopation.
It's holding you back from my love.
The song with the most energy is perhaps its biggest song, Superstition. This song came together in one marathon session, and it was almost given to one of its collaborators, Jeff Beck. However, Berry Gordy convinced Stevie to keep it. Barry, you're almost forgiven for shelving For Once in My Life. Almost. This is a classic, one of Stevie's greatest songs ever. The incredible horn arrangement paired with the clav, or should I say, clavs. That clav part is actually 8 clavs at once.
Now that's what I call Thursday night. I apologize if my tone is coming across like I'm lukewarm on this album, but I think it would be weird for this album to inspire a heated reaction. You know, it'd be like if I showed up decked out in sports gear for a coffee shop date.
The main takeaway is Talking Book is another excellent album from Stevie. Like Mom before it, Talking Book was received and sold well enough, but less than you'd expect given its stature nowadays. By late 1972, Stevie was already back in the studio for a new album. But the scope of this one was gonna be a bit bigger. Stevie wasn't gonna be singing strictly about love on it. He was absorbing George Orwell book excerpts, Federal Reserve reports, Eastern philosophers. This would be where he's coming from now, because he was in a new location. In August 1973, Stevie Wonder released Innervisions.
What's specifically neat about this classic period is how Stevie manages to step up his game every time. And that's especially true for these next 3 albums. It's like a basketball player shooting half-court shots and then continuing to make them as he keeps stepping back.
For Innervisions, we've got a blend of Mom, Tb, and Wikf. This is a return to an album-length political statement, and my God, does he nail it. Too high? You want to tell me this isn't an instant classic when it starts like that? I'd say this is such a fun song if it weren't for its lyrics about drug addiction. Dang. Living for the City? Jesus Christ. Let's put some respect on these verses quick. The subtle, menacing energy in the keys, and God, Stevie gives the melody his all, singing about a man growing up in Mississippi who moves to New York City with dreams of making it, only to end up broke, sick, and in jail. I love the way he sings this specific note.
In hot damn Mississippi.
I also love how aggressively he sings on the final verse. According to legend, Malcolm and Robert not only had Stevie wear his voice out with constant takes, but they also got Stevie pissed off by interrupting his takes without permission. That story Stevie tells isn't just told through song, but also through a spoken word ambient section where the man gets arrested. Prince Paul would later say this was the main inspiration for skits on hip-hop albums. Golden Lady, not only a bulletproof chorus, but at the end, Stevie starts pulling off key change after key change. Oh my God, I ascended. I actually levitated inside my tiny apartment, so I only went up like 4 feet. It's not that impressive. Higher Ground? I have it in my script here that this is the most song on the whole album, and I think that's valid. Absolute classic. Stevie singing about second chances and redemption over one of the funkiest instrumentals ever conceived. Whole song only took 3 hours to make too. Mr. Know-It-All, lovely closer, and probably the most politically pointed song here. It was specifically pointed at President Nixon just as Watergate was going down. Innervisions is spectacular. All right, now Now all those dummies in the 70s are matching up with us cool folks in the modern day. Innervisions sold damn well, got 3 top 20 songs, and earned piles of rave reviews. And boy did it arrive at the perfect time. Trust in America was at an all-time low. The Vietnam War was winding down, Watergate like I mentioned before, the 1973 oil crisis. Stevie was truly speaking to and for the people. The album would go on to earn Stevie multiple Grammys, and he even became the first black person to win Album of the Year.
However, Stevie would not get to celebrate its immediate success.
3 days after Innervisions came out, he and his cousin crashed into the back of a flatbed truck in North Carolina, and Stevie sustained a severe head injury. When they got to the hospital, the staff determined that Stevie was in a coma. He laid there for 4 days, with everyone wondering when and even if he would reawaken. And thankfully, he would.
The legend goes, Ira Tucker from the Dixie Hummingbirds visited Stevie in the hospital and started singing Higher Ground in his ear. And as he sang, Stevie's hand began playing the clav part.
Once he woke up and after some time to recuperate, he left the hospital. Sadly, he did not walk out exactly the same man. He lost his sense of smell permanently, he lost his sense of taste temporarily, and he gained a scar on his forehead. You'd think he would spend a good amount of time resting after this terrible incident, but no, he was back in the studio in early 1974, once again with Malcolm and Robert, spending time between Record Plant in LA and Electric Lady in New York. You might also think Stevie would creatively rein it in after his accident, but if anything, it kicked him into overdrive. Stevie & Co. recorded so much that he was actively considering a double album for his next release. However, Motown asked Stevie to cull it down to a single LP, which he agreed to.
I should also mention a particular session he was on in March 1974. He partook in a jam session featuring John Lennon and Paul McCartney, 2 blokes who had split from their previous band a few years prior.
This jam sesh would eventually be released as a Toot and a Snore in '74. It is the only known recording with both John and Paul after the Beatles broke up and before John was killed. It's not great, but it's interesting, and that's enough. In July 1974, we got, let me make sure I get this right, Fulfillingness's first finale. Surprising tongue twister. At first, I thought we'd be getting a return to the chillness of Talking Book. At least that's what I figured from the opener Smile Please and its pleasant bitty bombs. But as the album reveals itself, it turns out not to be a talking book, but more of a dancing almanac. By which I mean, it's a synthesis of the past 4 albums, and it's got a lot of moves. There are slower moments for sure, like Heaven is 10 zillion light years away and Creepin'. I was particularly struck by They Won't Go When I Go. Inspired by Chopin, sounds like a funeral processional with such sobering lyrics. It feels especially relevant after his car accident. But the album does reach a higher ground when it comes to its energy. Boogie on Reggae Woman is the album's biggest song, and God, it grooves so hard.
Can I play?
My guy, you've been playing this whole time. You're just asking now? Bird of Beauty is a groovy display of Stevie's interests in Brazilian rhythms, something he had been showing for a couple songs now. There's also You Haven't Done Nothing. This one is a mix of Mr. Know-It-All and the former because it's another track aimed at Nixon, and the latter because the horns sound incredibly similar to me. Oh, hello. Who's that doing the backing vocals? It's that family band from before, the Jackson 5. They had been scoring some hits for Motown as well. I hope they keep it up.
And I hope one of the members eventually gets a pet monkey.
Fulfillingness's first 5 nights at Freddy's might not be the towering achievement that Innervisions was, but I mean, we are really getting in the weeds here. Yes, chef, I've had 4 of the juiciest steaks of my life, but this latest one has slightly less pepper on it.
These are all remarkable albums. And I'm left wondering, where does Stevie even go from here?
Like Innervisions, FFF was an immediate success. Great sales, stellar reviews, and a couple more Grammys, including another for Album of the Year. At this point, Stevie Wonder was a bona fide worldwide megastar. Not too bad for a 24-year-old. What the fuck?
But the time after Fulfillingness' first finale saw a number of changes in Stevie's life.
For one thing, he wanted to quit music. Yeah, he had been spending more time in West Africa, and he even wanted to move to Ghana permanently and work with disabled children. This was not a fleeting thought. There were plans for a farewell concert. Motown eventually changed his mind with a new 7-album record deal and a $13 million advance. The whole deal was potentially worth up to $37 million. At the time, this was the most lucrative deal any artist had ever signed. Stevie also got to keep his publishing rights and an excellent royalty rate. However, Stevie did not keep Malcolm Cecil and Robert Margouleff. Long story short, their partnership was never officially written down. Malcolm and Robert felt they were owed royalties. Stevie didn't invite them back for future albums. Malcolm would later buy out Robert's share in the synth and then go on to work with folks like Gil Scott-Heron and the Isley Brothers. Once the new record deal was signed, Stevie got to work on his next album. And oh boy, do I mean he got to work. He set up shop mostly in Crystal Sound in Hollywood, recording at all hours of the day. By the end, he had recorded around 200 songs with the aid of 130 musicians. Motown wanted this new album out in October 1975, but Stevie delayed it in order to nail the mixes. To capitalize on this, Motown made shirts to appease the hungry public. Shirts that said, "We're almost finished." This is technically not a typo because the original shirt did not have an apostrophe. This delay also meant Stevie did not release an album in 1975, which means he didn't win Album of the Year at the Grammys for a third year in a row. The award instead went to Paul Simon for Still Crazy after all these years.
And most of all, I like to thank Stevie Wonder, who didn't make an album this year.
After a long wait, in September 1976, we got Songs in the Key of Life. Oh my, where to even start? Well, Stevie sure got his Fulfillingness' second finale and his third, because this is his first and only double album. And it's a double album's double album. It's incredibly ambitious, encompassing several different sounds and genres and topics. It aims to be a record about life and everything that comes with it. And you want to know the scariest part? It works.
Given the size of this record, it would be really hard for me to cover every single song without sounding like an insane man, so I'm gonna run through my own highlights, and I'll still probably sound like an insane man, but hey, what's new, am I right?
Love's in Need of Love Today opens the album gently, like a friend welcoming you into their brand new home, even as it comments on the sorry state of modern society. Village Ghetto Land is actually pretty funny in a sick way. It's about the realities of a poverty-stricken neighborhood, but the music underneath is driven by these classical synth strings. The whole thing has a very tongue-in-cheek, sardonic feel. Contusion is the only instrumental song here, and it's jazz fusion, cause sure, yeah, what's even going on? He's doing Astons in the Donuts. Sandwiched right next to each other are two of Stevie's biggest hits, Sir Duke and I Wish. The former is a celebration of past musical icons and the feeling they gave to audiences. In tandem, everything about this song is iconic. The horns, the vocal melody, the chromatic notes in the pre-chorus, and I Wish is equally iconic, an ode to Stevie's childhood days. This might be my favorite Stevie Wonder song? It's so hard to pick, but man, something about this song has stuck with me for years, ever since I heard it in the trailer for Happy Feet. Shout out to the greatest horn harmony in popular music history. Summersoft pulls off the Golden Lady trick of multiple key changes at the end, and once again, I levitated. Pastime Paradise is more societal commentary about folks who pursue materialism and laziness. It was also famously sampled in Coolio's Gangsta's Paradise, something that I did not know until listening to this album for the first time.
Wait, does this... Wait.
By the way, I filmed that entire first listen. You can find it on Patreon and Nebula, links in the description. Ordinary Pain has a tender first half, but oh man, when Shirley Brewer comes in to ramp up the second half, she absolutely kills it. Isn't She Lovely opens side B, and it's a dedication to Stevie's firstborn child. Yeah, he had his first child in 1975, and he would go on to have another 8. God damn. That first child is on this song too. At the end though, she's not the baby who's cooing in the intro. Fun fact, despite being a well-known song, this was never released as a single, largely because Stevie refused to cut down the nearly 7-minute runtime. And to close this out, there's the 1-2 punch of As and Another Star. As has possibly the best build across any Stevie Wonder song. It's so subtle yet precise, you cannot help but get swept up in it. And then Another Star brings it all home with a Latin soul jazz dance party epic with George Benson on guitar. It might be the most uplifting song about a breakup ever made. If there's one singular issue I have with this album, it's this run of tracks that starts off side B. None of these songs are bad, but they all have very similar structures. Extended intro, main song, some form of lengthy outro, whether it's Stevie playing with his newborn baby, or a call and response about the accomplishments of Black Americans. If these songs were spaced out on the track list, I would probably enjoy them more. Aside from that though, I can't fault the main album for anything else.
But you might be asking me, where do babies come from? And you might be wondering, what do I mean by main album?
Yeah, so in case you didn't get enough music, Songs in the Key of Life came with a bonus EP with another 4 songs. And they are fine. I don't have much special to say about them. In fact, I have an issue with streaming services because they lump in those 4 bonus songs as if they're part of the main album. They're not bad songs by any means, but there's a difference between ending an album with Another Star and ending an album with Easy Goin' Evening, My Mama's Call.
Songs in the Key of Life is the kind of project that everyone should aspire to. And I'm not saying everyone should make a classic album or even an album, but I want to believe that everyone has it in them to make something that encompasses the totality of their life and even life in general. You have it in you to make the Songs in the Key of Life of gardening or tax reform or furniture. You know what I mean? Like, if you've got this album as the benchmark for what you're trying to do, even if you don't reach it, you're gonna make something incredible.
Songs in the Key of Life is a stone cold classic. No surprise, Songs in the Key of Life was received rapturously when it came out. Multiple hit songs, multiple Grammys, including Album of the Year. As of now, Stevie is the only artist to win Album of the Year for 3 consecutive albums.
Imagine if Stevie was winning all of these Grammys today. Imagine all of the stans who would want him dead.
As you might do when you've made a landmark album, Stevie took time away from the spotlight after its release. He traveled to Nigeria, which is where he accepted his Album of the Year Grammy. He connected with Ray Kurzweil, inventor of the Kurzweil reading machine for the blind. But what was truly next for Stevie Wonder? Touching grass, apparently. He was contacted by Wallen Green, who was making a documentary based on the 1973 book, The Secret Life of Plants. While Stevie initially agreed to record a song for the movie, he ended up falling in love with the book and decided to make an entire soundtrack. In October 1979, Stevie Wonder gave us his journey through the secret life of plants. You have no idea how much I want to say Secret Life of Pets. Now, the question we really need to ask is, where does Stevie go after Songs in the Key of Life? If he could give us an album like that, he could give us anything. He could continue pumping out classics like no one had ever done before. And with The Secret Life of Plants, he didn't really do it.
Hey, the classic period had to end at some point, right? Songs in the Key of Life concludes Stevie Wonder's classic period. One of the greatest album runs in music history. Stevie's place in popular music was firmly set at this point. But we've still got albums to cover. So what does that make them? Let me say right up front, the rest of his albums are not bad. In fact, Stevie has the same problem as Prince. And I say problem because he has a very consistent discography. I don't think he's released a bad album. However, it makes it difficult for me to talk about some of these records beyond the usual details.
But also, whether he intended to or not, doing a soundtrack was a pretty good move. Soundtracks are a time-tested way of releasing low-stakes follow-ups to major albums.
Like, do you care if the Wuthering Heights soundtrack isn't as good as Brat? Does anyone care?
If anything, the major failure of this album belongs to Motown. The second they knew Stevie was about to technically follow up Songs in the Key of Life, they jumped all over it with promotion. If you go into this expecting another classic album, you will be disappointed. But on its own terms, Secret Life of Plants is, and I can't believe I'm saying this again after all the 70s albums, fine. The coolest things about this album boil down to behind-the-scenes tech stuff. For one, digital technology. This was the second ever pop album to be entirely recorded through digital means. Also, Stevie was once again at the forefront of keyboard tech. A major instrument on this album was the computer music melodeon, a synth that allowed for playback of organic samples. Certainly a nice touch, given the earthly subject matter. The album itself is as stylistically diverse as the previous album. African music, jazz, Indian music, funk, Japanese music. It's certainly not a regression for Stevie, but it just doesn't inspire as strong of feelings in me as the past 5 albums. The only songs I had notes about were Power Flower, which was a nice chill jam, Race Babbling with vocal effects that reminded me of 90s dance, and A Seed's a Star, which is just a good bop. I suppose I should also mention Send One Your Love, as it was the biggest hit off the album. Beyond that though, yeah, fine. Secret Life of Plants was a big success initially, but sales quickly slowed down. Berry Gordy later said that the 1 million copies Motown pressed were about 900,000 too many. What's also wild is that the documentary itself had a very limited release. It played one time in LA in late 1978, then had a bunch of small art house showings. Motown marketed the album like a major event when the attached movie played basically nowhere. Stevie was pretty disappointed by the overall reception of Plants and its associated tour. Low ticket sales meant he only played 6 dates, but the response certainly did not slow him down. He bought himself a recording studio in LA and named it Wonderland Studios, and with it, he went full hermit mode on a new album. In September 1980, we got Hotter Than July.
Now, not to bring up Secret Life of Plants again, but I have a theory. If that album had not come out and broken the streak of classic albums, Hotter Than July would be part of that group.
I think this is certainly up there with Talking Book and Fulfillingness, and what's remarkable about this album is how it maintains the playful exploration of Songs in the Key of Life while condensing it down to a lean 45-minute package. Stevie covers so much ground here. Disco on the opener, Did I Hear You Say You Love Me, country on I Ain't Gonna Stand. He also dabbles in reggae on the album's biggest single, Master Blaster Jammin'. This one was heavily inspired by Bob Marley. He and Stevie met back in 1975, and their friendship eventually led to this outright tribute of a song. He even revisits early Motown-era songs. All I Do dates back to 1966, when he wrote it with Clarence Paul and Morris Broadnax. Shout out to the backing vocalists, too. Who's doing them? Stevie's cousin, who had recently released an album of his own, Michael Jackson.
Yeah, sorry to bury that fact this far into the video, but according to Janet Jackson, Stevie and Michael were third cousins once removed.
And when Stevie is just doing the typical funk and soul, like on As If You Read My Mind and Do Like You, he effortlessly nails it. I would say he could do it blindfolded, but I don't think that would matter. I also want to specifically call out the closer, Happy Birthday. You might think this song is just Stevie's go at creating a classic birthday song, a la the Beatles' Birthday, but this song is about someone in particular. MLK Jr.
You see, around this time, Stevie had been working with King's widow to make his birthday a national holiday. And in a few years' time, that would happen. Stevie Wonder is a big reason why MLK Day exists.
This album deserves appreciation solely for impacting American history in that way. The fact that it's also great is a nice bonus. Hotter Than July earned excellent reviews and spawned a number of hits like Master Blaster. It was pretty clear that Stevie Wonder, the megastar, was back in full form. But when it came time to follow it up, Stevie found himself feeling stuck. A new album began to form in 1981, but it kept getting delayed. That doesn't mean he was totally gone from the public eye though. In 1982, he scored a big hit with Paul McCartney, Ebony and Ivory, an ode to racial harmony. So I'm not racist, but the message is lovely, but God, I've never loved this song, and everyone I know shares that same feeling. But you want to know the most messed up thing? On the same McCartney album as Ebony and Ivory, there's another duet with Stevie. And it's outstanding. What's That You're Doing is the two guys singing over the kind of funk you would hear on any Stevie album. It's insanely good. I am shocked more people don't talk about this one. 1982 was also the year we got Stevie Wonder's Original Musicquarium. This is a compilation of songs from throughout the 70s with 4 new songs as well. Now, 3 of these are good, but the last one, Do I Do, is incredible. Imagine Stevie on Off the Wall with a Dizzy Gillespie trumpet solo and even a bit of rapping at the end. Pure disco bliss. What about a new Stevie Wonder album? A new record began to take shape when Dionne Warwick reached out to Stevie about doing a song for a Gene Wilder movie. Like Secret Life of Plants, one song turned into an entire album, and in August 1984, we got the soundtrack to The Woman in Red. Remember how Stevie was dipping his toes into digital technology with Plants? The Woman in Red is him doing a cannonball. This is Stevie firmly embracing the sounds of the 1980s, and it's all right. The opening title track is a slick slice of 80s funk and R&B. It kind of reminds me of Who's That Girl by Madonna, though maybe that's just because they're both about vague women. Stevie and Dionne get 3 duets for themselves, and I'd say Weakness is the best of them. But the album's biggest hit, and perhaps one of Stevie's biggest hits ever, was I Just Called to Say I Love You. Jack Black, what do you think of this song?
Well, it's sentimental, tacky crap.
All right, so this one has a bit of a reputation. On one hand, it's nice, a simple song about checking in on someone you care about. The chorus is catchy too.
However, and this is the first time I'm saying this, it sounds dated.
All the hits before, even stretching to the early Motown days, they had a timeless quality about them. This one? Nah, we are firmly in the 80s with this one. The song's simplicity doesn't help. 2 verses, chorus, 2 verses, chorus that vamps until the end. It doesn't really grow in any way, aside from a key change at the end.
In fact, this song specifically is seen as a turning point for Stevie, where he started veering into a more commercial direction, which I don't know if I fully vibe with that. You're gonna tell me the early Motown days were not the epitome of commercialism?
Stevie had always balanced pure artistry with a commercial instinct. That's a big reason why we got the classic albums. But from here on out, Stevie was perceived as leaning hard into the sounds of the time, for better or worse. And I will say, the last song, Don't Drive Drunk, is a total dud for me. Sounds super dated, goes for over 6 minutes. This might be my least favorite song by him. But to be clear, I think the message is fine, which I suppose is better than the alternative.
I love this song almost as much as I love Driving Drunk.
I Just Called to Say I Love You was a huge hit in several countries, and the soundtrack did pretty well too. It even knocked Prince's Purple Rain off the top of the US album chart. Reviews at the time were fine, but nothing amazing. We wouldn't get the next album for another year, but Stevie continued to stay busy. He played harmonica on Chaka Khan's I Feel For You, and Elton John's I Guess That's Why They Call It the Blues, and he sang on the giant charity single, We Are the World. The next proper Stevie Wonder album would arrive in September 1985, In Square Circle. This is another advancement for Stevie when it came to embracing the tech of the 80s. For this album, that means MIDI and drum machines abound. One might think we'd be in for another dated record, but one might also be a dummy. Some of the songs on here are freaking bulletproof. Part-Time Lover, the opener and the biggest hit, bounces with a swung shimmer inspired by the Supremes' You Can't Hurry Love. Tracks like Go Home and the excellent I Love You Too Much are unstoppable trains of groove. Whereabouts shows Stevie still nailing the good old slow jam. And like on Hotter Than July, the album closes with a politically minded track, It's Wrong, Apartheid. Stevie had been very vocal in his support of Nelson Mandela. His music even got banned in South Africa after thanking Mandela in an award speech. And this song features exiled South African musicians. I will say though, the keyboard at the end reminds me of that one Disney Channel meme.
she's really good.
Not everything on here lands, but there are enough highlights to make In Square Circle a good time. In Square Circle got reviews that ranged from 2, and Part-Time Lover peaked at number 5 in the US. Stevie continued to be a representative of new musical tools. Here he is on TV in early 1986, demonstrating a sampler on the... Recording for the next album started in 1986. The main idea behind it was the different personas that folks inhabit as they move through life. Their public faces, their private details, almost as if each facet of them is a character. In November 1987, Stevie Wonder released Characters. Now, what if I told you this album itself is also a character? Just pull off the mask. In Square Circle again?
This is where the problem I mentioned earlier really kicks into gear. From here on out, I'm not gonna have as many unique things to say about Stevie's albums.
Characters is more slick 80s pop R&B in the same vein as In Square Circle. And for me personally, there are fewer highlights to call out. But that doesn't mean there are no highlights. There are 2, in fact. Get It is a funky little ditty and a duet with Michael Jackson. Stevie's second duet with MJ, after Just Good Friends from Bad. And then the album's biggest song, Skeletons. God, this one is so good. Despite all the other excellent funk Stevie had made by now, this has to be one of the funkiest things he's ever made. I also love this one because, like Prince's Kiss and MJ's Bad, it is very fun to sing along to.
Just getting ready to blow. Just getting ready to show.
Check those 2 songs out for sure, and if you want more songs like In Square Circle, you will find them here. Characters was another solid success with its sales and reviews, and Skeletons was another top 40 hit.
However, it would be the last time, as of now at least, that Stevie got a hit song in the top 40.
Things would go quiet for a bit between albums, but Stevie was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1989, a very worthy inclusion. Stevie's next album would see him return to the world of film. He linked up with Spike Lee for a soundtrack for Jungle Fever, released in May 1991. We're in the 90s now, which means one thing: New Jack Swing, baby. This is Stevie's first time playing with New Jack Swing as a genre, and it fits him well, like on Queen in the Black, which has na-nas that remind me of Another Star. There's also the title track, which sounds like the intro to a 90s sitcom in a good way. Fun fact, Robin Thicke reportedly sang this song to woo his ex-wife, Paula Patton. Each Other's Throat. I wrote in my notes that this one sounds like the Muffin Man heading to Copacabana to get a timeshare from Humped Dumped. If any of you know what that means, let me know. It's a fine record, and I hope Stevie continues to play around with New Jack Swing. I mean, I know if he will. I listened to all of his albums, but you know. The Jungle Fever soundtrack received okay reviews and okay sales, though the title track has gone on to have a life of its own.
He's got jungle fever. He's got jungle fever. They've got jungle fever. We're in love.
The next proper Stevie album had actually started development back in 1987, but as had become routine for his albums by now, it suffered multiple delays. The breakthrough came when Stevie traveled to Ghana to perform at a Pan-African music festival called Panafest. The trip really kicked Stevie into high gear, writing tons of songs that would be on his next album. This next album was Conversation Piece, released in March 1995. One thing's for sure, this is Stevie's most genre-diverse album, since the 70s? The New Jack Swing is once again here, like on the opener Rain Your Love Down and My Love Is With You, but there are R&B ballads like For Your Love, funk on Sensuous Whisper, reggae and some light auto-tune on Tomorrow Robins Will Sing, South African music like Take the Time Out with Ladysmith Black Mambazo. Sorry starts out with this new wave sounding bass, and it eventually grows to a really fun place, bars. A lot of critics would compare this album to the classic period, and at least stylistically, yeah, I totally see it. Granted, I don't think this album hits the same heights as any of those records, but it's certainly nice to hear Stevie wilding out like this. If there's any proper issue I have with Conversation Piece, it's something that was common in a lot of 90s albums. The length. This album simply did not need to go on for 73 minutes. And you might say, well, Mike, Songs in the Key of Life was over 2 hours, and that was great. Yeah, because that was Songs in the Key of Life. I'd let that album step on me. Reception for Conversation Piece was all around positive, and it got Stevie a few Grammys, but sales weren't amazing. The next break between albums would be Stevie's longest up to this point. Folks were waiting over a decade for it. But like before, Stevie was still around. There was his live album Natural Wonder in 1995, his performance at the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta, his 1997 duet with Babyface, his 1998 contribution to the Mulan soundtrack, his headlining set at the 1999 Super Bowl, and a whole bunch of other performances and awards throughout those 10 years. Stevie's next album was originally going to come out in 2004, but did it?
Is My Hand a Foot?
It would instead come out in October 2005. His most recent album as of now, A Time to Love. And you know what? Good album to round out this retrospective. By and large, Stevie returns to the live band feel of the golden days, but with some shiny 2000s sheen. It reminds me of Prince's 3121, a polished, updated return to the sound he became known for. In fact, Prince plays guitar on the album's best song, So What the Fuss. It is very cool to know that Stevie, a 55-year-old man at this point, can bust out the funk like nobody's business. Other highlights include How Will I Know, where Stevie duets with his daughter Aisha Morris, the very same Aisha we heard on Isn't She Lovely? Shelter in the Rain, a dedication to Sarita Wright, who passed away in 2004. The opener, If Your Love Cannot Be Moved, a fiery condemnation of political hypocrisy. The closing title track with Paul McCartney on the acoustic guitar. Oh, and Please Don't Hurt My Baby. Is that the skedaddle sound effect? I can't say A Time to Love is a classic, but it is a very nice album that shows Stevie Wonder excelling at all the things Stevie Wonder excels at. Reviews and sales for A Time to Love were fine. Since its release, Stevie has spent the following 2 decades just kinda hanging out. Occasional performances like at Michael Jackson's funeral and the 2014 Grammys with Daft Punk, occasional guest features like on Mark Ronson's Uptown Special or Travis Scott's Astroworld. The only bits of new music came with the launch of his own vanity label, So What the Fuss Records. There was 2020's Can't Put It in the Hands of Fate and 2024's Can We Fix Our Nation's Broken Heart. In terms of a new album, Stevie has been teasing multiple as early as 2008. The Gospel Inspired by Lula, When the World Began, 10 Billion Hearts, Through the Eyes of Wonder.
I'm going to put music out. I'm working on my project, which is called Through the Eyes of Wonder.
All have been named, none have released as of now. But I do hope we get at least one more from him. Doing this dive has made me realize how timeless Stevie's music can be, how unifying it can feel. Also, not to get too dark or anything, but fingers crossed he releases it sooner rather than later.
If you want to get into Stevie Wonder, that run of albums from the 70s, Music of My Mind to Songs in the Key of Life, those are essential. After that, and this might be kind of controversial, check out a Greatest Hits album. I think that covers the rest of the big hits from the early Motown days and the 80s onward.
And if you dive in further like I did, you'll find plenty of great songs. And collabs too. That Paul McCartney song, What's That You're Doing? I cannot get over how good that song is. Put Ebony and Ivory in the shadow realm. Paul McCartney was, of course, a massive artist in his own right. Not just for his own stuff, but for a band that got big right after Lil Stevie got his start. But that band ended before Stevie even got to his classic run. And man, what a falling out they had. I learned all about it by watching McCartney After the Beatles, available exclusively on Nebula. If you want to watch more of these deep DISCOG dives, they're all over on Nebula with no ads, and sometimes with longer song samples and extra thoughts. But that's not all. You also get a growing library of exclusive series, from on-site documentaries to live comedy to original scripted shows. This is a creator-owned prestige streaming service, on par with any other big-name streamer out there. Nebula is powered by 100 hamsters who live on Mars. If you click the link in the description, go.nebula.tv twitch.tv/MikeTheSnare, or scan the QR code on screen, you can get 50% off an annual subscription, and you can help support me as I stay inside for days on end editing videos like this. I'm not joking, I am breaking the ad for a second. I have not left my apartment in like 3 days. This is genuinely not good for my health. Thanks to Nebula for sponsoring this video, and goodbye.